So Alex Cava's Split Second was actually an interesting read. I didn't expect it to be. It's one of those FBI police drama sort of thing where they're trying to get the serial killer and whatever. I guess we figure Tess is saved at the end, but I would have liked to see it somehow. I did enjoy the story in spite of the rape stuff, and it didn't make sense that he killed his friend. That's what anyway. And yeah, we've been enjoying a popular brand of soup lately. And I noticed one of them has the MSG listed and the other one does not. But it does say flavor contains blah blah blah. So maybe that's hidden in there, but I don't know. Maybe this one doesn't have MSG.
Same company?
Same company.
Well, presumably.
Don't show the product name.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Anyway. But let's see, per 125 milliliters. Okay, so there's one thing about if you want to fill a bread bowl, you'd have to use a whole pot, like a whole can of that soup, which is much more than the serving size. But a bread bowl is huge. I don't know if you feel like this is enough of a serving size, James, when you have.
No, I'm not a big fan of soup, but it's a nice way to have it. Well, there's some soups I like mushroom soup and tomato soup, but at least of this particular brand. Try not to mention it.
Well, they don't need our.
Oh, they don't.
To promote them.
They don't. Although this one particular brand, for some reason or another, actually produces stuff that's
that people would want to eat. Yeah.
Unlike the big cheese brand.
Yeah.
And unlike what else? Well, the big chocolate cookie with a white filling.
Oh my God. Yeah.
That one's so grody.
It is disgusting.
A cookie monster.
You know,
can't
when
stand
I was a teenager, I got into eating that stuff.
What, the big cheese brand or
no,
the black and white
black
cookies?
and white. I don't know why, but Dad would get it for me.
Yeah, it's amazing. They're like
As
number
a treat.
one. I presume there's something like number one.
And so I associate a lot of brands with like eating certain brands like that. Like I'd associate that with my dad. Those cookies.
Yeah.
Because my dad had a sweet tooth. And he loved it when he loved getting sweet things for me. If I took a liking to some sort of sweet thing that he
That was pretty sweet of him. Yeah.
And but then anytime I feel like, oh, I miss my dad, then I might go for those sort of things, right? Just like this soup that I'm eating today, I associate it with my mom. I never particularly cared for it, but I know that she cared for it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so I think about her, and it's really too bad, you know, because I would rather have some recipe that she made and make that and associate that with her, you know? Like, I think it's natural for us to associate, for food to be such an important part of our existence, and we associate it with being cared for as from when we were a child, right? Or whatever, but because It tightens that, or it strengthens that bond with your family. Anyway, but for corporations to be involved in that, woven into that, those feelings of love and nurturing, that's not right. It's kind of perverted, really. So.
Well, I think it's perverted if they try to utilize it for marketing. If they just produce good stuff.
Anyway.
But it's better to go with like my dad, two of the things I like remembering about him, he's still alive. And still doing pretty well, really, all things considered. Over 98 and a half years old. He made Welsh rarebit. You don't really get that ever. I never really had it. Real stuff. It's not like melted cheese. It's like more so. Sandwiches, because you've made lots of melted cheese sandwiches. They're very, very nice, but they're quite different. And pancakes, you know.
Yeah, I associate
way
pancakes with my dad.
Yeah, it's something that some guys can make. I'm such I won't say bad cook, I'm just not a cook, that I don't even know how to make pancakes.
Yeah, I think that's the first recipe that every teenager learns how to make.
Well, if they learn any recipes. I think there are a lot of hopeless and helpless guys out there.
And I think
that don't know.
I think children learn how to fry an egg first. Or boil an egg.
I learned how to boil an egg. I could fry an egg, I think. I'm a food preparer of sorts, just a very limited repertoire.
But I'm not the only one who sees this food industry weaving themselves into to be your surrogate mother, really.
Yeah, it's not just the companies putting stuff on shelves. It's restaurants.
It's restaurants too. Like I was talking about how Tim Hortons, you go in and the coffee's always the same, and I shouldn't have mentioned the brand name, but I could mention any brand.
What the heck?
I could mention any of them.
You're just mentioning
all the same
a guy who used to play defense for the
uniformity.
The Toronto Maple Leafs and the Buffalo Sabres, and who died in a horrible car crash. So.
Yeah. So,
they're just using the name too.
Yeah, I guess
like
that's true.
He didn't come up with the product.
No.
He was just a figurehead.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand it because, as I recall, he wasn't really a rough guy, but he was a tough guy. You know, just not the sort of guy you'd associate with donuts and not even coffee. It was like some guys you might say like Kenny Linsman or something like that. Too much coffee. He had a real bad temper, you know. And he couldn't really control it. He's almost like the John McEnroe of the ice skating rink. Without a net between him and the opponent to keep him from, you know, shoving a stick down their throats or something like that. But Tim Hortons was just the kind of guy who was going to, well, he was a Punch Imlach kind of guy, but he wasn't going to get unnecessary, from Punch Imlach's point of view, penalties, but he'd get maybe 100 minutes of penalties every year, consistently, and he would brutalize you in front of the net. But it was basically, at least within what how the referees called the rules. So you'd get cross-checked, but it'd never be flamboyant if you parked yourself in front of the goal. Very different from Tim Hortons' image. I thought it would never fly. And it soared, not just fly. So You know, there's an admission. I was wrong. Or I'm volunteering that information. It's not really an admission.
But yeah, I was just thinking about Futurama and how they're the big corporate giant who I think sold everything. And Futurama was Mom.
Well, that's
Dress up in a sort of fat suit, you know.
Yeah.
She was not that way at all, but she'd look like she was just everyone's grandma kind of thing, you know.
Well, those
Harmless.
big box stores are getting close to being that. So the big one, it's almost more like a father image. It starts with a W. We'll call it WM or something like that.
Yeah.
Of course, it treats its employees, non-unionized, of course, not very much like. They're not very much like paternal figures.
I don't know. It's weird though. Have you went in? Like I'm an early morning shopper, and I don't go to that WM store, but I did go in. I think it was in Grand Prairie.
That's a long time ago, eh?
Yeah, and I went in a couple times in my life, but one time I went in the morning because I'm an early morning shopper, and they were doing their rah. They all the
motivational
employees,
thing.
Yeah, it's really frightening.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Cult-like?
Yes,
Yeah.
totally cult-like. It's really weird. But they do that. Maybe it works out for them. Maybe they have less, you know, what do they call it? Wastage from staff.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird though.
I've only been inside a WM shop 3 times in my life. Twice I bought. 3 times I bought. The last time was this last July. I just needed a place, clean, well-lighted place to hit the washer. I don't like going into a place and just using the washer, even if it's something as big and corporate as that. Corporatist, I should say.
Yeah, I suppose.
So I noticed it had the big double arches incorporated into the store.
Yeah, they do.
I was going to buy some food because I needed some food. I was on the road. And
yeah, my dad used to love their hot apple pies.
yeah, I couldn't believe how expensive the food was at the double arches.
I know, because it's really gross.
It's not very good. It was their fish burger.
Yeah.
Now I was really hungry. I walked in there. It was a particular place in southwestern Saskatchewan that I kind of like. The name doesn't really live up to the body of water flowing through it, but it's nice enough in its own way. It's not quite prairie. Got a little bit of a roll to it. And the people have always treated me nicely. So I don't want people to take this the wrong way if they live it. Or if they have near and dear ones there. But it looked like every grody person was in I almost said it, in this southwestern Saskatchewan city it is, was in the WM. And there were a lot of them. It was like something out of the Purgatorio Wars. It was, I had not... A crowd flowed over the bridge. So many. I had not thought death had undone so many. That's T.S. Eliot's quotation, perhaps translation. I think it's of the Purgatorio in the Wasteland. How often do you tune into something on the internet and that's just yeah, there you go. Anyway, it was almost more than gross, but gruesome. So I fled my way out of there. I didn't want to share washroom facilities Well, it was more the crowding and stuff like that. It was scary, you know. I was masked. I don't know if I think I saw maybe one person with a mask in there. I just fled the place. And there was a neighboring. It was not the Double Arches. It was another burger joint that was adjoining, and I hit there, and they actually had a decent fish burger for a decent price there. I was hungry enough, so I bought another. And
Was it the one that starts with an A?
oh, you mean with the bleeding meat and stuff like that?
No.
There's one that starts AR that
Oh,
has
yeah, that
bleeding
one's
meat.
gross.
It's gross. It was.
I
I've
don't know
always
why people
considered
like
it
that.
gross.
It's so disgusting.
Well, some people just love their meat, and they love. I mean, it's just everything on the agenda is not just meat; it's bleeding meat.
Yeah, I guess that's a place where people who end up with gout like to go.
It could be. Who are they saying
Gross.
has gout now?
Oh, the pretty woman who looks like a movie star that goes to get food from the Summit Show Me with me. I was telling you that she.
No, it's some young person.
Oh.
It was on the CBC.
Yeah.
And
But
they were
you
saying
can
it was
turn it around
caused by
if you
meat,
fall, you know,
and
you
she
gotta-
was saying, "Oh, no, okay."
No, that
yeah.
was her. I was telling you.
Oh, no, it was someone else.
Somebody else.
That was someone else.
Well, it could be other
it would
rich
be a
food.
common reaction.
You know, yeah.
I've got a member of the family who's had gout for a long
Yeah,
time,
and-
screaming pain. It never seems to give up.
No, but if you get gout, you better really change your diet seriously. Seriously.
Yeah, the other
Because
thing.
you're going to end up with diabetes.
Well, you know, like I've talked to this person, and he says, "Oh, it's the jury's out in terms of meat causing gout, and the jury's out as to meat causing diabetes, and the jury's out as to gout being a predisposing factor or some sort of thing, premonition or something like premonitory kind of warning of diabetes."
Mhm.
So I'm going, the jury might be out, but why would you gamble?
Yeah. I mean, anyway.
I mean, he's almost 70 years old. I mean, Johnny Cash died,
No,
I think,
well,
of
this
complications
woman
of
is young.
diabetes
I mean, she looks
at
young.
70 or
She's
71.
younger than me for certain. Much
Oh.
younger.
Okay. Oh, that was a person. Yeah, that's
Yes.
right. I thought you were talking about someone older.
No.
Yep.
She's got to fix it. Got to.
Oh,
I mean, a
she's-
lot of people when you're raised in a certain culture that eats a lot of meat, when you're eating meat every day, 3
Well.
meals a day, whatever, you might think you're eating not very much if you only have half the amount of meat that
Yeah.
your other family members are having during each of those meals or whatever.
Oh, she's a
Gotta
wonderful
stay away-
person, but
yeah,
you know, a
gotta
lot
stay
of it
away
would
from the rich
be
food.
associated not just with culture, but with family,
Yes.
with the mother.
And that's
you know,
it.
in that
When you
culture,
eat
the mother
those-
would make the food.
Yes, and then she would associate those recipes with love and nurturing.
Yeah.
And how do you, once that's woven in, it's really tough to get away from.
Yeah. The recipe is all about love, the preparation, but the ingredients they will kill you remorselessly.
Yeah, you got to stay
Certain
away
types of
from sugar,
ingredients.
refined sugar. I don't know if honey's okay, maybe, but you got to stay away from the sugar. It's easy to fall into that trap because who doesn't like sugar? But if you find yourself, you have fresh fruit in the house and it's lovely and ready to eat, and you're still dipping into the candy stores, well, there's something wrong. That's addiction pulling you to the candy, not the fruit, right? It's sugar is it's as addictive as cocaine.
That's what they say.
So it reacts in your brain the same way as cocaine.
So I think the thing about it is both are death on the installment plan. That's not my own phrase.
Sugar and meat.
That's a translation of Celine, Morta Credi. See, hey, check this out. Getting, a reference to T.S. Eliot, Dante, and Celine in the same program. How often does that happen? And we're just talking about
Yes.
fairly mundane
We're
things, you know, like
unscripted.
what was it,
This is just
sci-fi
our
or
morning
something
talk.
like that? Yeah. Morta Credi and Death on the Installment Plan, I think is the way it's translated. Death on Credit might be a better, more direct way. So that's what he used that. I mean, his politics were stunningly, crazily right wing, from what I can gather, and I think he was describing Europe during and after World War II. But with that phrase, but I use it to describe, by extension,
People who drive
people
too fast and yeah.
People are addicted to speed of the two different types.
Yeah.
People are addicted in any sort of way. People who just have death styles instead of lifestyles. But what they're doing is they're rolling the dice. I mean, there's some people who just go out and commit suicide. There are other people who do it a little by a little, or
Yeah,
they take
and-
chances constantly.
Well, I don't have a problem with like I was thinking about when I was little. There was a ghost that was haunting one of the houses that we lived in, and the ghost, she stayed in one of the rooms, and my mom just made that our playroom, which we didn't want to play in really because she was there, but she didn't, I just don't think that she knew she was not supposed to be there, sort of thing. She just thought, so she just continued living her life in her house, you know, or although she wasn't living anymore. And I think a lot of amiable people, you know, if they have some sort of if they're living as though they're dead, I don't know that it really matters, or that they want to die. Even it matters for them, but they're not putting it out onto other people. You know, they're not risking other people's lives or other people's happiness or whatever ability to live in the process. Whereas aggressive people, they want to take everyone down with them.
Many, you know, like there are ways of channeling things. So Pete Townsend's aggressive, and he's more like the aggressive propagandist type. But you know, there were all sorts of fights in the Who, and there's the aggressive dictator type showing up. But you know, like he was generous. Like he'd give, you know, in their first big hit, he gives the solo to the bass player, and he didn't have to be the lead singer. It's really embarrassing when you get so often in rock and pop there'll be a male and a female singer, and the male usually is the one who gets most of the vocal parts. And usually, and when I say usually, it seems like 75% or more, the woman has a much better, stronger voice. And Townsend wasn't that way. He was satisfied. I can't ever see him being content. He was satisfied to basically sing backup. He'd do have an occasional part where he'd sing lead and stuff like that. And Townsend was a guy who kind of directed that sort of stuff. He managed not to kill himself, and he recognized some stuff like that in others. You know, like speaking of Morta Credi, when Brian Jones died in 1969, summer of, Pete Townsend maybe had the best thing today. Is short and sharp, not really sweet. But it's kind of sweet because he said, "Poor Brian, he died a little every day." So and he was, I suppose, Townsend. I think he had a susceptibility to alcohol early on and for quite a while. And in the late 70s, there was this reflorescence, cocaine addiction, and he got into it then. There were other people who got involved with that. George Harrison, I think, was another who in the mid to late 70s got really wildly crazy into cocaine, And mid-70s to slightly early 70s, David Bowie. They got preternaturally thin. I can't say that necessarily happened to Pete Townsend. I think Joni Mitchell as well, but preternaturally thin. I just can't see someone. In many ways, she had a fairly level head by comparison with some of these other folks, the yellow propagandists who were involved with 60s and much of the 70s music. They lost the throne to disco, but they were still going along selling huge hunks of albums and things like that. It's just people weren't dancing to them anymore. I can remember one poor lost soul saying around 1978, like, I can only dance to disco anymore. She was my age, so she would have been 24 or something like that. I can't dance to rock and roll anymore. I'm dance to rock and roll. All you're saying is you don't know how to dance. I mean, you should be able to dance to any type of music. Something like a regular beat. That was appalling. And of course, within a year, it was that year, Pete Townsend again, what he was singing was a goodbye, Sister Disco. Yeah. A lot of people got into it a little late, and they were at the tail end of the wave.
The Sister Disco, hey?
So long, Sister Disco. I think it was more like So Long and Not Goodbye. Something like that. That was on their 78 album. And I thought, you're being a little premature here, buddy, but it was next year there was a crash set, and you still had people doing it, like Blondie with Heart of Glass. Have you heard that song?
It's awesome.
It's a very good song. At least, there's a little too much repetition, especially the lyric stuff. They produced much better stuff, but I didn't understand what they were like, because that's all I was hearing on the radio. But basically, they were coming up through the American version of the punk revolution. They were so much better than what was coming out of England. The United States kind of turned it around. There was this British invasion that kind of, maybe you could call it the third, but it's almost like the second one. The first one is the Beatles and the Stones and Animals and the Kinks, so on and so forth. But the second one is, I consider the big one, is the punk one. And oh my God, the stuff that came in on the punk coattails in the United States, the Ramones kind of apparently started it, even before the Sex Pistols. But the Ramones are better than the Sex Pistols. They could hold a tune. And like there was Tom Verlaine in television, and even something like Talking Heads. We don't think of them as being punk, but they kind of came out of that. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers is worth all. They were worth all of the English punk movement combined. Yeah. And Tom Petty's not my favorite. He's one of my favorites.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah.
Too bad he's gone.
Yep.